That is what we're here to talk about today. EAGLES Eagles. Mac and Mac on Birds 365. John McMullen, Happy New Year.
Yeah, how about that? New league year officially starts. All the talk can turn into actual moves and transactions. Yeah, exciting day around the NFL. Although you know what happened. All the big
Exactly.
things.
They made it into a less exciting day with legal tampering, legal negotiation, call whatever the hell you want. Takes a little of the starch out of the actual New Year's at 4:00, but you can't complain if you think your team is doing well. And if you're an Eagle fan, I think you've got to believe that overall. We could sit here, oh, they still haven't gotten a linebacker. You're right. But they've added some superior talent to this football team. The latest of which came down yesterday. The return of CJGJ, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, is back with the Eagles on a 3-year contract, which in and of itself has actually been kind of strange because no one has leaked out the actual numbers yet. All I've seen, John, is upwards of $33 million. Well, you could say upwards of every contract that you get. He's got upwards means something, which means it's not necessarily $33 million, but there could be incentives tied into it, and you need to see the actual structure of the contract. We'll figure that out over time. Somebody will give the actual numbers, but just the fact that they got him back is big. And here's my question for you, because you use this phrase often, that the Eagles are disciplined, that they have their way of doing business, they have their valuations, and they stick to them, and they hold strong to those valuations. They've gone damn close to top of market for 3 different players, a running back, a safety, and an edge rusher. That is not usually the way of the Eagles doing things. Different philosophy. These players were so good they couldn't help themselves. If you disagree with my philosophy overall, tell me, but I think the numbers speak for themselves. Why do you think we've gotten a less disciplined Eagles team in roster building this year?
I don't think it's less disciplined. I would argue it's not top of the market except for running back. The running back is top of the market, but if you look at edge rushers as a whole, that's a very valuable contract. If Bryce Hupp turns into a big time pass rusher, everything's about how the player performs. But I always say about the Eagles, and I'm very confident, and the Saquon Barkley numbers are out today. It's very Eagles friendly. They don't sign bad contracts from a financial perspective. Now, in hindsight, as long as Howie Roseman's here, Jake Rosenberg, Bryce Young, you're not going to see a bad Eagles contract from their perspective. And again, the financial perspective. Now, if you fall flat on your face, yeah, in hindsight, it turns into a bad contract. But I'm saying in the moment, they don't sign bad contracts when compared to the rest of the league. I think that's continued with these 3 particular players. In the case of CJ Gardner-Johnson, when the numbers do come out, there's going to be tremendous incentives. It's going to be very team friendly. And that was one of the issues the Eagles were concerned about with CJ in the past when he left. Is he going to get paid big money and still perform and all that kind of stuff? What
made them change their mind on this one?
The
incentives are going to dictate that he's going to play hard.
Well, I don't even think it's about play. And that's a Jeff McClain. So I didn't hear that specifically. That was Jeff. So I'll say, perhaps that was one of the reasons that the Eagles didn't want to go so drastically towards CJ Gardner-Johnson the first time. I can't confirm that, but it certainly makes sense. I think it comes in now that he's gone, and both sides, by the way. CJ said a lot of things when he was out leaving the door, and I think both sides, grass isn't always greener on the other end. The Eagles saw it and said, damn, we need a playmaker on the back end, and CJ made a bunch of stinking plays when he was here.
Mm-hmm.
So they missed him drastically. And then CJ went to Detroit. And it's funny because Landon Dickerson talked yesterday after signing his big money extension. And he said, he talked to when he was asked about staying. He said he talked to people that have left, and they tend to regret it because of the way the Eagles do business and first class organization, yada yada. And I think it was funny. Maybe that happened to CJ. Now he got hurt in Detroit. I mean, he basically had a Ponte Maddox season. He tore his pec in week 2, and he worked really, really hard. I think it was week 2 or week 3.
No, week 2, yeah.
And he worked really, really hard to get back at the end of the season. By that time, Detroit was cruising. The safeties were playing well. You know, he played some slot, didn't play up to his standard like Avante, and maybe it didn't look good from Detroit, but you got to give him a lot of credit for working and coming back hard and coming back for that injury. So I think it's a grass isn't always greener thing from both sides. And they said, you know what? This really worked when it was here the first time. Let's run it back. And I think it's a good signing for the Eagles because they need that guy. He is a ball hawk. There's concerns over durability. He missed 5 games when he was here. And he missed most of the season last year before coming back for the final couple games and then the playoffs. So there's some concerns, but from a contract, and I went on a tangent, but from a contract standpoint, yeah, financially, the Eagles don't sign bad contracts. Even Saquon Barkley, as I said, the numbers come out. If he's a total flop, which I'm not a big fan of the signing, as I've said on the show, doesn't matter from a financial perspective. With the cap rising, it's not going to be a blip on the radar. But
yeah, I don't think you say that, John. And we'll see if they do anything in the next however many hours. And it's not like when 4 o'clock hits, shut it down. All the free agents are done. No, it's going to continue on. There were a couple of really, I think, good linebackers that were out there this year in Patrick Queen and Luvu, and they got neither one of them. And if you hadn't spent top of the market money for a running back, then you could have gone deep at the linebacker position. So you can say that the money doesn't affect. Well, they're in a capped world. And I think the Eagles are going to walk away with a secondary linebacker again, just like they did last year in free agency. And although you can't directly tie it, you can tangentially tie it that if you pick certain positions where you're going to go with a high value player, a high salary player in comparison to others at that position, it doesn't allow you to do it at every single position. So I think
no, and I actually, in the moment, I actually wrote about it on SI. I actually agree with you. In the moment, it might affect you budgetary wise, but the Eagles weren't involved with Patrick Queen. There's I mean, to them, it's about evaluation, and that's what, if they thought Patrick Queen was the outlier, like they think Saquon Barkley is the outlier running back, they would have went after him. They don't think of it that way. Now, when you start talking about the Luvus of the world, probably a little bit too expensive, but I thought there were a bunch of guys. Al Shair was one of them, Josie Jewell, Blake Cashman, all these guys would have been upgrades. Willie Gay, they all signed elsewhere, and they would have been budgetary. Wouldn't have been a restriction if they didn't sign Barkley. So you're right. Maybe potentially they didn't get a mid-level linebacker like that, but did they even want one? That's a legitimate point, though. I think you're right. It's a legitimate point. I'm talking long-term, though. If Barkley flops, it's not going to matter. From a salary, they're not going to be hurting down the road to move on from the contract. And that's what I meant from that. But while I say that, the Eagles want it both ways.
Yeah.
We're so smart and we do this and we do evaluation correctly. You're not getting that pass from me. If this player doesn't succeed, you're going to hear about it, at least from me. And others are going to say, I already saw Joe Banner out there. Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it matters because 38% of the league over these 2 days has flipped over their running back situation. 38% of the league. And there's a lot of big name backs who signed for a lot less money. And if they're more productive, come on.
Right.
I mean, that's part of it. You can't have it both ways. So if you're going to be, and I just did, I give the Eagles all the credit in the world, typically for being disciplined and signing good contracts and doing all the right stuff financially. So when you go outside the box, don't give me that, oh, it's not going to matter, because
Right.
they're already trying to float that out there.
That's where I thought you were going, and I'm going, no, I don't believe that. Now, I think Saquon's going to play very well, so he's going to be worth the contract that they gave him. But if they don't, yeah, you put money into the running back position, and you could have put it into another position like linebacker for me, because there were other good running backs, like you just said, who signed for lesser money. The top couple linebackers are all off the board now, so you're playing in the middle of the market at best for linebacker, and I think they have undervalued that position. And the CJGJ thing is a perfect example of Eagles and good news, bad news. Here's the good news. When the Eagles, in conjunction with CJ Gardner-Johnson, decide to move away from each other, they both made that decision. The Eagles supposedly gave him a long-term contract offer last year, which long-term could be 2 years. If you're more than one, it's a long-term contract in some people's minds. And CJ didn't like it. It wasn't good enough for him. He said no. So Howie pivots and he kind of pushes Slay's hand and threatens to release him, and they get an extension done with them, and they decide to go for Bradbury rather than CJ. That was a dual decision, but the Eagles had as much to do with it as CJ did. It didn't work. Their replacements at safety this year didn't work. So I will tell you the Eagles made a bad decision last year by not being more aggressive to keep CJ Johnson. But here's where Howie gets credit. He'll admit mistakes. He won't be stubborn. He won't go, well, we made our call on CJ. He's not that good. We're not going back after him. No, they saw the safety play they got, and they said, yeah, maybe we should have gotten him done last year. Let's see if we can rectify that situation. And they did that with this contract. And that's, John, you've dealt with them. They're guys in the National Football League. They make a call. They take it to their grave. They're not going back. They're not reevaluating. We made the call. We're standing by it. That can get you fired. That can be the downturn of an entire individual's career and or a team's career on a short-term level. Eagles are not afraid when they make a call and it doesn't work out the way they thought it was going to work out. They're not afraid to fix it. They're not afraid to go back and reevaluate.
No, and that's
our player.
CJ's a perfect example of that. And as I said, I think it works in that particular instance. It's both sides, because CJ could have said that I'm not coming back to Philly. I'm not that. And so I think both sides saw, again, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they were right to do the 180. Look, they wanted, and you brought up the linebacker situation. Yeah, I don't think the Eagles wanted to go above Green Bay for Xavier McKinney, but that was their first option at safety. And, they didn't have enough. In that case, it's probably financial discipline more than wanting the budget money, but you never know. Maybe they wanted to go higher and said that we can't go higher. So that part does factor into all these things. But I agree with you, and they needed a playmaker at safety, and it was so deep on the free agent market at that particular position. You knew they were able to get one. Yeah, I'm still troubled at linebacker, though. And Josina Anderson tweeted out last night the Eagles are still looking for a linebacker by hook or crook. So that took to me, maybe they're going to trade market. Maybe there's a young linebacker, maybe like DeAndre Swift last year at running back. Maybe they see a guy who they think can do something in the final year of his rookie deal that hasn't really panned out in their original city. Maybe they'll go that direction. Howie's got a lot of avenues to go through. But yeah, there were a number of those mid-level linebackers that I thought would have been a nice fit here, and they're all gone. They're all gone.
That does worry me a little bit, but all in all, I think the return of CJ Gardner-Johnson is a big re-addition for the Philadelphia Eagles. And they made a couple other additions yesterday, solidified the special teams, bringing back their long snapper and their punter. And Braden Mann, by the way, earned a 2-year contract. Good on him. He had a really good year.
Great season.
Yeah. He had a really good season this year, and the Eagles, A, took care of him, and B, took care of themselves. But they also introduced their how many $million? $86 million man?
84.
84, sorry.
And there's a perfect example. See, Landon, and this is like the Carson Wentz deal way back in the day when the Eagles set the market. So right now he's the highest paid guard in the history of football, average annual value.
Mm-hmm.
But you've seen it explode already, the guard market on the NFL. In a couple years, that's going to look good for the Eagles. It always does. And that's what people, how could you give that money to Carson Wentz? Well, it turns out it was really cost effective, but the player failed. So, that evaluation still matters more than anything. And you got to get the players right. Landon's a very good player. And I think people that harp on, oh, he's got the biggest guard contract. I mean, that's the moment. That's how it works. That's a snapshot in time. It's his turn. The next guard's going to get more than him. The next big time Pro Bowl level guard's going to get more than him. That's just the way it works.
Right. The best example of what you're talking about. There was a minute, and I'm not all that far. I'm using hyperbole, but not by much. I think Jalen Hurts was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for about 30 hours.
Yeah.
Because shortly thereafter, Lamar Jackson signed, and he was the highest paid quarterback for about 3 days. And then shortly thereafter, Justin Herbert signed, and he became the high. And then 2 weeks later, Joe Burrow signed. And, yeah, they just continue to top each other. And Landon will be the number one guard for a while, and he could be proud of that. But you're right. At some point, somebody else is going to come along, and the team is going to value him even more than Landon Dickerson. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. You got Mac and Mac here. I'm Birds 365. We got two good guests coming your way. In hour number 2, Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News is going to come on. You said you thought he was the first one that said it was official, Saquon Barkley?
Not official. He was the first one to say the Eagles had significant interest, and everyone looked and said, really? And Pat's got a really good personal relationship with Saquon. So that's the one that made me say, oh, Pat's saying it. Maybe there's something to it. And I still didn't think the Eagles would go to $12 million. But yeah, I mean, he was the first one, and he was the one where I said, all right, we got to start taking this a little bit more seriously. But even then, I'm going to be honest, even then I didn't believe it. Yeah.
So Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News is going to jump in on hour number 2. Certainly talk about the Barkley situation, but I'm hearing people say, oh, the Giants, they got Brian Burns. The Giants are winners in this offseason.
Brian Burns is a good player, man. Now, they had to pay him a ton, and you got to give up significant draft capital on top of it. But Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, who I like, Kayvon Thibodeau started to turn the corner last year. He's immensely talented. That looks good on paper, man. That looks good on paper.
It does. You want to say that's fine. They replaced Xavier McKinney yet? I don't think so. Do you think Singletary is going to be Saquon Barkley-like for them? I don't think so. I don't think the Giants have done all that much. They've kind of moved some pieces around, but I don't know that they've improved the football team, and they're in a spot where it's no guarantee they're going to get a top quarterback.
2 days. We're not even. This is the first day of the new league year. I mean,
John, how many let's grade the free agent moves so far columns have you seen?
Well, that's all you can do, but it's also silly. Is all I'm trying to point out, because there's a million moves.
Did Sports Illustrated ask you to get silly? Because I saw about 20 of them.
They do
well,
not.
Then be thankful they haven't asked you.
I push back.
That's what we do. That's what fans want.
I get it. But I'll say it. I'll say individual moves, and I know we got to get to Martin. He's in the green room. I'll say I like individual moves. I don't like individual moves, but yeah, I mean, grades at this point are silly. Hey, I say mock drafts. Mock drafts before free agency are the stupidest things in the history of mankind. You got people saying Atlanta's going to trade up to get Jaden Daniels. Oh, are they? Not anymore. You dummies.
I understand. I agree. Maybe it's because I can comprehend it and go, this isn't where you get that this isn't written in stone. We do it today. We do it tomorrow. We do it the day after. Things change. Signings happen. Guys leave teams. In the moment, you can look at it. And I've seen a couple in the moments. Ooh, the Giants are doing real well. I just don't agree. And we'll discuss that with Pat Leonard. That's hour number 2. More importantly, hour number 1 is Eagles Talk with McMullen, McDonald, and the man, Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal, joins us next here on Birds 365.